What could be more amazing than hanging out and living on a sailboat in the Bahamas?
Not much. Today we talk with Jocelyn Fassner. She is one of our fabulous fire community members, and she's someone that Gwen and I have been hoping to get on the podcast for months. Her story is bananas, crazy amazing, and it involves all of our favorite topics like really cool real estate hacks to saving to pursuing your dream lifestyle.
Don't forget Minnesota.
Minnesota, absolutely. And we can't wait to share a story with you. You guys are going to love it.
Welcome to Fire Drill Podcast, where side hustles, savings, and creativity lead to financial independence. With your hosts, Gwen from Fiery Millennials and Jay from Millennial Boss.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Fire Drill Podcast. We are extra excited about this one tonight because we have one of our community members who Gwen and I literally hunted her down to get her on the podcast. I've been following her on Instagram for a few months now, and her story is just amazing. We have Josie from moonshinepenguin.com here. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. And Gwen is here too.
I don't want to say that we stalked her, but we kind of stalked her.
We definitely stalked her, yes. Did you feel like you were hunted there?
I mean, I got a couple of emails that were lovely. No, not even for a second.
Okay, glad. And the phone calls too. Sorry. But we're just so excited. Okay, so let's start out by telling everyone just a quick bio of who you are.
Right now, I am 35 years old. I live on a 34-foot, two-bedroom sailboat in the Bahamas with my husband. I write for the website, and I just got published in Germany in a very bizarre twist of events. And that's where we are right now.
Congratulations on getting published. That's a huge accomplishment.
So looking at your pictures on Instagram, I mean, I see a dog with a life jacket, the cutest dog ever, by the way. I see beautiful sunsets, the beach. I see a pig. I see a sailboat. So you've had a lot of adventures over the last few years.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good couple of years. About 3 years we've been on the boat. Bought it in Minnesota, took it down the Mississippi to New Orleans, through the Gulf to Key West, across to the Bahamas, and now we're here, still on the move.
How long have you been living the boat lifestyle?
We bought it 3 years ago, May.
So lately I've been getting really into the boat idea. I actually spent my last 10 minutes of work today looking up houseboats where I currently live, and I got so into it. And then I like the idea of living on a sailboat. So it's something that I'm considering. Gwen, have you ever considered living on a boat?
No. The closest I've gotten is, what's that song? I'm on a boat. I got my flippy floppies. I'm on a boat. That's about as close as I've gotten because, I just don't think that's the lifestyle for me.
Yeah. It's the anthem of our people.
Yeah, we've had two sailboat life people on the podcast before, so we've had a good representation, and we're so excited to talk about your story. So you mentioned that you had some experience with sailing, but let's start where this whole sailing thing happened. Had you always planned on living in a boat?
Oh, no, boy, not at all. I was a flight attendant and my husband was a pilot. That's how we met. And about 4 years ago, I was drying the dishes one night and I could tell something was bugging him and he wasn't saying it, so I was just leaving him be. And then he said, all serious, can you come sit down? And I'm like, oh boy, what's this about? And I sat down and he said, I want to sail around the world. And neither one of us had ever touched a boat before, and it didn't make any sense. And it took about 3 heartbeats for me to say yes. And then actually we made a 10-year plan to get onto the boat, but somehow it became a 1-year plan. It all happened so quickly once he said that. I mean, we didn't know at all what we were doing. And it's been a hell of an adventure.
Did you have to buy the boat at the beginning?
Yeah, so we bought it in Minnesota. We were still in Minnesota. I was still working. That's where I'm from. My family's all there. And we bought it in Hudson, had it trucked to where I lived in St. Paul, and lived in a marina there for a summer, which was just the best summer of my life. I mean, you can imagine. We had just gotten our boat, just started living on the water. It was this beautiful, beautiful marina. Our neighbors were a young couple that also just bought their boat, and they were so excited as well. And I mean, we just had a blast. I fell in love with living on the water immediately.
Now, see, so I've been to Minneapolis plenty of times. I mean, I'm moving there soon. So I had no idea. I mean, the Mississippi's a giant river, but I had no idea you could fit like a whole 34-foot sailboat on in a marina and on the river. Like, that just seems crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of marinas that you can choose from, even all the way down the river, and it's a whole community that you don't know exists around you if you don't have a boat.
What actually is it like going down the Mississippi River on a boat? I mean, what do you do? Like every couple days you do something, or how does that work?
That was actually a really big bucket list item of mine, except I wanted to take a raft. I always wanted to take a raft like Huck Finn down the Mississippi River. And this was a little bit more comfy than that, but from Minnesota to Dubuque, Iowa, it was stunning. The most beautiful bucolic mountain towns and these beautiful bluffs. And
The bluffs. They're
stunning.
so beautiful.
Truly. It is. I mean, it was amazing. And then after Dubuque, it was pretty much the same for about 2 weeks.
Do you stop at ports? I mean, I don't even know about this. Like, what do you pull over on the side of the bank? Like, what do you do at night?
So we anchored. We were doing it quickly because my husband had to get back to work and we wanted to get to New Orleans before that happened. So we were running it from sun up to well after sundown, and we would anchor it in the night. So one of my favorite things about this was on the river at night, a lot of times because it's so protected, there's no wind. And so the water is pure glass and it reflects the stars back at itself. So it's like you are in the middle of the entire universe. I had never, up to that point in my life, seen anything like that before. And it truly was one of the most remarkable things I've ever experienced. I would sit up front with my walkie-talkie and he would be driving and I would tell him of any impending things in the water. And it was so romantic and calming, and God, I can't explain it. And there's no way I could ever explain what it was like.
I think that's the only time anybody has ever said anything really that positive about the Mississippi. I drive over it every day to and from to get to work. And it is just a big, it is just a big ribbon of gross, soupy, brown water.
You're ruining the fantasy, Gwen.
I'm sorry. I just want to keep this real and just say, like, yes,
right.
It can be beautiful and the stars can be reflected and it's just so peaceful, but it's also like disgusting water.
You're absolutely
just
right.
To keep it real.
We really need to work on that, Mississippi, actually, I think.
I refuse to step a toe in it. Like, my friends are like, let's go boating. And I'm like, you have fun with that. I'm just not going to let all of that toxic water touch me.
Yeah, you really want to keep out after the Minnesota River enters it.
So were you working as a flight attendant at the time?
I stopped working May 1st, 3 years ago. I think, what would that be, 2015? And we launched our boat on May 1st. So I stopped working the minute we got the boat because we knew that somebody had to be with the boat at all times. We also had a boat cat at the time, which he hated sailing, so he's now a land cat. But someone had to be with the boat at all times. So one of us had to quit, and he has been working towards this career for his entire life. So it was obviously going to be me.
How does it work with him? Given that he works in the airline industry, he can probably fly to whatever he has to go to do his job for free.
He's based in the U.S. It's home basing, so he's based anywhere in the U.S. The company is called Kalitta Airlines that he works for. It's a cargo company, and they fly 747s. So they will fly him from wherever in the U.S., so say Fort Lauderdale, to wherever they need him in the world. So he's been doing Germany a lot, or Delhi, or Hong Kong. He's home for a month. Sometimes it's different. Depends on where we are and what we have going on. But normally he likes to back up his schedules. They have him for 16 days a month. Most of the time he backs those 2 months up together so that he's gone for a month and then home for a month. So the month that he's here, we're sailing around like crazy and seeing everything that we can see. And then when he leaves, I am a month by myself wherever we end up. I don't sail by myself. I can. A lot of women do. But I buckle down and I write a lot when he's gone and I read a lot. I work a lot when he's working. And also, I'm in the beautiful Bahamas, so I'm also running along pristine beaches and going out and meeting the locals. But that's kind of our cycle.
How do you meet people in the Bahamas? Do you have friends down there?
I don't. Actually, that's not true. In the boating world, it's very tight-knit and you constantly run into people you have met along the way. So even if I don't think that I have friends somewhere, I usually end up finding somebody. In fact, just today, somebody posted on Instagram a picture of South Bimini sign when they came in the airport. And I immediately sent them a message, and we were drinking a beer at the beach within an hour.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it does happen like that more than you think. It's lovely.
So I first read your blog. I found moonshinepenguin.com/fire. You have this long post all about your fire journey, which is epic, by the way. And I'm going to tell people, just skip the show notes. Don't even go there. Go straight to this post, moonshinepenguin.com/fire. And in it, you mention a quick thing I'm going to read. You wrote, 4 things happened down my road that have expedited my retiring 5 years after learning how. 1, our first 2 houses were bought right after the bubble burst and were great deals. As Warren Buffett says, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. 2, I married a man who has never said the words, we can't because, but instead says, okay, how can we? 3, we got very lucky in that neither of us ever wanted to create babies. 4, we like being uncomfortable. And I thought that was a very great summary of your path.
Thank you.
So maybe we'll start with the first one. Talk to us about your real estate journey.
I always knew that I didn't want to work for somebody else, but I never had any idea that that could be possible. In my mid-20s, I was a flight attendant, as I said, and I was working for this little airline. I was making $1,300 a month, if that. I was calling in sick all the time. I was a terrible employee. Truly, I hated working for other people. And I was in a weird habit of forcing myself to read whatever books were left on the plane. I found that I would learn much more from the books I didn't want to read than I would from the books that I wanted to read. So Rich Dad Poor Dad was definitely one of those books. I would never have wanted to read a financial book. Robert Kyoto's Rich Dad Poor Dad was left on my plane. And within a chapter, I knew that it was going to change my life. I had never been told anything like that before. And it's basically, the book is, this guy's got 2 dads, and one is rich and one is poor, and what they tell him and what the difference is. And I was so struck by this book. I can't stress that enough. So about 10 months later, I had worked all that time to pay off this personal loan that I had that I was paying 13% on. It hurts now. It was a $20,000 personal loan that I had taken out to party and travel. I had no house, no car. I had nothing to show for this money. So once I paid that off, I borrowed from my 401k and bought a house as quickly as I could. From all the things that I learned in the book, I needed to get an investment. So I knew I didn't want to pay rent or mortgage. So I stuffed my house with bunk beds, and I made a website for short-term rentals. I got emails from anyone from doctors and nurses to family members to friends of friends to airline people. The more beds that I could get in, the less I could charge for rent, but the more people there were. I was making triple the mortgage on that house. I had doubled my income after the mortgage was paid with just that one purchase. So I misstepped a lot after that. I started spending a lot of money again because I was making more money than ever.
So you said that you wanted to do a house hack, which a lot of people in this community do. When you were thinking about the purchase price, did you have a calculation in your mind that you were aiming for?
Nothing. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and I know that a lot of people come on with a lot of good details, and I am exactly the opposite of that. I am so big picture. Luckily, my husband is a little more details, so we work well that way, but I knew I didn't want to pay rent or mortgage. I figured out how to do that. I had no idea if it would work. I had no idea what kind of money I could make. I jumped in and found out what it could be, and it was more than I ever imagined.
That seems to be a theme, you and your husband's life. I mean, you're going down a boat on the Mississippi River, you're living in the Bahamas. You guys just make a goal and take action. So that's really cool.
Thank you. That's one thing that our friends talk about all the time. In fact,
when you met each other, how did you recognize that in each other?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It was pretty quick. We met in operations, which is like a crew lounge for flight attendants and pilots. And he walked up to a table I was sitting at with another flight attendant. And I leaned over and I said, "Who the hell is that?" And she said, "I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know who that is." oh God, it's embarrassing to think of now. I blubbered through something about his small laptop just to like be able to start a conversation with him. And then he asked me if I wanted to get a Frosty at Wendy's. It was like the closest thing to our operations. Well, I had been a vegan for like 3 years at that point, and I was like, yes, I want a Frosty. We walked around for about half an hour and talked, and then I went to Europe for 6 weeks and forgot about him. And then when I got back, I still had a week off of work, and I had a text on my phone from, I think it said something like the cute Detroit pilot with the eyes. And it said, meet me in Mexico Wednesday. And I looked on the computer and I texted him back and I said, Mexico's full. I'll meet you in Honolulu. And so our first day was in Hawaii. And I think that was a pretty good indicator of where people were at in their lives.
That's so adorable. And Gwen, it kind of reminds me of your story with the shotgun Vegas trip that you guys went on.
Yeah, definitely. So my boyfriend and I met at a party that he hosted, and somewhere along the way it turned into a date. And so then the weekend after that, I was going to Vegas and I was going to go meet friends. And then those friends said, hey, sorry, something came up. We can't be there that weekend. But hey, enjoy the condo. We'll see if we can get back in time. And I said, oh no, what am I going to do in Vegas by myself on the 4th of July weekend? Like, I went to hang out with you guys because I didn't want to be alone. So in the air, I'm texting him and I'm like, oh, I wish I was going to Minneapolis instead because that would be a way better use of my time. And he was like, well, I'm not doing anything. I could come to Vegas. And I was like, yes. And so he flew up the next day and we had the best second date ever.
That is fantastic. That's perfect. Your kids are going to love that story.
For sure.
If you have kids, no pressure.
Well, and unfortunately, it kind of closes off a lot of things that we can tell them because it's like, no, don't do that thing because that's irresponsible. And they'll be like, you guys did that thing and it worked out for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't fly to Vegas. Don't fly to, where'd you guys end up? Honolulu?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, to meet someone that you barely know. Sounds like a great idea. But hey, it worked out awesome. And now you guys both have incredible relationships, which is awesome.
This all goes back to me just loving being uncomfortable.
Yeah, putting yourself out there, like coming on this podcast. So thank you.
My pleasure.
So to get back to your story, so you figured out how to do the house hack, which is really cool and creative, and it was bringing in income for you. So what happened next?
About 2 years later, I had a misstep for about 2 years afterwards. I was partying with the people in the house. I had never gone to college, so it was like my dorm experience. And I was racking up credit card debt again, which is insane because I had spent so much time working that down. And about 2 years after I bought my house, I used to take checks for rent, and I would have this envelope where I put the checks. So I was going through the checks in the envelope, and I realized that I could have paid off my house had I not been doing any of that. And that was yet again another turning point where I said, something's got to give. I'm going to change this. And then I got back on track and have stayed on track ever since. So at that point, my boyfriend at the time, my husband now, and I talked about what we should do next. We could both get FHA loans because we weren't married. So he bought a foreclosed duplex. We fixed it up and rented the top out for the mortgage. We moved into the bottom. We rented out our guest bedroom in that house for more income. And then we also rented out the bedroom we had vacated at the other property for even more income. We lived in that house for about a year. After we fixed it up, it was suddenly worth $70,000 more than we bought it for. And so we took that money in a home equity line of credit, and we used that as a down payment on another duplex. We put my mom in the bottom of that duplex for about half of what we could get for rent. And then she would take care of all the properties for us. We took the top of that last duplex, turned it into another professional house, as we call them. And that house also makes about 3 times the mortgage.
And these people staying there, they don't care that it's bunk style.
No, not at all. If they're looking for cheap, short-term rentals, they know what it is. The website clearly states what it is. Mm-hmm. And that's what they get. So no, they're not bothered by it at all.
That's probably good because then you don't have to provide the amenities and the extras unless you still do that.
Right. No, we do not. But I will say this. The other thing that everybody always wants to talk about is, have you had bad renters? What if someone messes up your house? So I have had some bad experiences, nothing major at all. I've had to ask a couple of people to leave. But in the last 7 years from starting this journey, I've maybe had to ask 4 people to leave. I've probably had 1,000 people come through my houses, the professional houses. The second duplex was just a single. We rented the top of the duplex to a family. So that one was not a professional house. As far as renters being bad, I have very good things to say about that.
We had someone on who's an Airbnb expert, Ziona. She was in one of the earlier episodes. And she said that Airbnb guests who are only there for 1 night or 2 nights, they're the best guests. They just go and they leave, and you don't have to worry about damage because they're barely even in your house. They're there to travel or whatever. So I can imagine it's probably even better when it's these professionals because they're there not even to be a tourist. They're there to get in, get out, do what they have to do.
Right. So the blog ends when I stopped working because I really just wrote it to motivate people or to just give them an idea of what's possible. And all the stuff after is kind of redundant. But eventually we have a certificate of occupancy on our duplex, our third house that we bought for the professional house. But for some reason, an inspector this year that came to look at our first property, whereas it's been inspected many times and been fine, this one inspector didn't like it. And so we had to shut it down actually. So now that house is a single family rental. We actually only lost about $500 a month because this is going to sound insane. It seems like so far out that it shouldn't be real. When we moved into that house, it was my first house and I was really excited about it. So I made my husband build me these weird shelves. They're like floating chain shelves. They're beautiful, really American stained wood. They're beautiful. He also made me a really beautiful island that matches. Those are in the kitchen. Then he made me some really cool leaning shelves out of black iron pipe in the living room. I have a reason I'm telling you this. When the inspector came and said, no more of these bunks, there's too many people in here, I put the house online. I listed it for about $600 more than I thought I could get for it. I thought, okay, we've still got a month because we're in the middle of a month. Let's just throw it out there and see what happens. Because of those stupid shelves, there was a fight, a bidding war over the house. And we ended up renting it for $800 more than I thought I could get for it.
I love that.
Because of this weird one unique aesthetic piece that when people walked in, they fell in love with. I had not planned that out. I couldn't have planned that better. I just liked these shelves. They were weird. They were different. And I couldn't have possibly have seen that coming, but it really worked out well.
Yeah, but they're not stupid because clearly they paid off.
They're obviously not, yes.
Don't you love partners who can make things? My husband's making me a standing desk, and I'm so pumped about it.
Yes.
So now when Gwen and I record the podcast, instead of being hunched over in this horrible contorted position that I am right now, I'm going to be standing up, anatomically correct. It's going to be great.
That's wonderful. Yes, having a handy partner is very, very helpful in life.
Yep.
I would like to think that my boyfriend would say the same thing because I'm definitely a handy one.
You are. I'm still waiting for my Harry Potter key.
I am working on okay. I don't have any space to do my stained glass stuff. Hold on.
My birthday's coming up. I'm just saying.
Okay, well, you're going to have to wait.
I love those.
Patience is a virtue.
I'm working on it. But you are very talented, and I think you have a huge business here, especially with us millennials who still think that we can get into Hogwarts. So, yeah.
I'm still mad I didn't get my letter.
I think I got my letter, and my parents hid it from me. They just didn't want me to know. Okay, so sorry, we're going on our millennial thing right now. So, Josie, so that's awesome that you guys were able to do that. You kind of went off track. You got back on track. Now the two of you are like financially figuring stuff out.
So there's one thing that I wanted to get back to because there's one thing that I was going to say about rentals. This is why I got into the inspector stuff. Suddenly we had, instead of 2 professional houses, we had 2 single family rentals. Sorry, 3 because we were living on the boat by then. And we had rotating people in the bottom of the second duplex. So I had dealt at that point with, I think, 5 different sets of people And every single one of those people would take a bullet for me. It's so easy to mitigate bad renters. You just need to be a good person. I would text them just to see how things were. I just wanted to make sure that everything was going right. Most landlords would never text their people. They don't want to hear about anything that's going wrong. I would go above and beyond, and I would bring them little presents. I mean, most of them became very good friends of mine. So I would text with them throughout the day about all kinds of stuff. Most people say you have to keep a professional distance. I say, scratch that. You absolutely want these people in your corner. If you are good to them, they will be good to you. I've let people out of leases early. For medical reasons, they need to live closer to a hospital. I mean, who wouldn't? But I know a lot of people that wouldn't. I've also given partial months for Christmas presents or for birthday presents. If you treat your renters well, they will treat you well. It's so easy to have good renters.
I think you and Gwen are spirit animals. Gwen, I bet you've given a tenant a present, right?
Yes, I did. So when I moved in, my tenant told me that the previous landlord had given him a card for Christmas, and he opened it up and it said, "Merry Christmas, your rent is going up $25. You can start in January." And I was just like, what? So this Christmas was my first Christmas with him, and he had been in an accident and was out of work on disability. And so I gave him a card that said, "Merry Christmas, your rent is going up $25. It starts in January." Just kidding. Who would do that? Here's a $25 gift card to Aldi.
Oh, that's so nice. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
He texted me and he was like, "You are the best person on the face of the planet. And I think that you are the best landlord and I have your back." And like
This person, yeah, he will never screw you over.
never.
You solidified a good relationship with him forever by doing that one so simple thing.
He's indebted to me because I was nice and I gave him a $25 gift card. That's nothing to me, but to him, that was like everything.
Right. So I met this guy when I was in New Orleans, and he had like 20 properties in Texas, and we were doing everything wrong and he was doing everything right, except that he couldn't retire and wasn't making any money and all these problems. And I don't know how we got to this, but he was like, "Oh, I love late fees. I love it when they don't pay rent on time. That's just more money for me." And I was flabbergasted by that. And immediately I saw, reading between the lines, exactly why he was struggling so hard and why we weren't. And I vowed for the rest of my life to, one, never charge a late fee. I've definitely had rent late before, never more than a week. These people will do anything to get me rent as soon as they can. And I don't believe in making someone's life harder when it's obviously hard anyways. I love that story. I love that you did that.
Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, it's a problem because I have to juggle that with being too nice. So this tenant that I put in December, he's only paid 1 month of rent. He hasn't paid me for February, and I doubt he can come up with March. So he knows that he has until the end of February to come up with February rent, and, you know, in an ideal world would come up with March as well. But he doesn't have a job, and he got a job and didn't want it, so he quit. So I've done everything possible to make it work for him, but he's sabotaged himself. So
okay, so I'm really curious about that because I've never dealt with that situation. So how do you think you could have not had that? In hindsight, was there a red flag that you would have picked up on, or is there a way that you could have not done that now, knowing what you know now?
I mean, yeah, this guy got turned away from 16 different potential places to live for a decent reason, and they just didn't want to take the risk. And I took the risk, and it didn't work out. But he got a nice place to stay for a couple of months. So I took the chance on him, and it worked out until he quit his first job. So
yikes. I don't know what to say about that. It is one problem that I have not dealt with yet. So I don't know what I would do. I hope I would do just what you did, give him as much leeway as possible, and then take care of myself. But that's really tough. It is one of the hard parts about properties, for sure.
But, you know, at the end of the day, he's going to thank me as he walks out the door. Like, he's not going to be like,
I sure hope so.
"This is baloney. You know, you're the worst person ever." He's not going to hide a raw T-bone steak in the top shelf of the cupboard like the last guy did. You know, like, he's going to thank me because he knows that he got grace and it was nothing personal. Like, this is a business. My goal is to have him walk out and say, thank you for letting me stay here.
That's lovely. I hope he does.
So Jocelyn, did you consider yourself financially independent once you got that? Was it your third house once you got that sorted?
Yes. So at that point, we were making plenty of money to retire. We were making enough to be comfortable in our lifestyle. But that also goes hand in hand with the no spend months and what we learned and changed during that time, which I'm sure we'll get into. So at that point, both of us could have retired and been very comfortable. But my husband got into flying so that he could fly the biggest airplane in the world, which he now is. He's one of the youngest people to ever captain a 747. He had these lofty goals. He wasn't captaining one then. He is now. He's going to do that for as long as it sets him on fire, and then he'll quit whenever he's ready. And during this time, one of the great things is that you don't have to retire. Once you're financially independent, you can decide to do whatever you want to. He wants to fly airplanes. And that just so happens to give money to our debt reduction, and that helps us further along and further along. I'm also working, obviously, I'm writing. So one of the great things about financial independence is that you can decide.
That's it. That's the whole game. When people are first hearing about this, what gets them hooked is, oh, wait, I can leave my job. Oh, that's awesome. How do I do it? And then when you get to that next level stuff, it's, well, now I have freedom to pursue what I'm passionate about, or to give back to the world, or to not do anything if I don't want to, but thinking about what you choose to do. And that's what it's really about, in my mind, at least.
Absolutely. And I say this in the blog as well. It's so important to find your why. If you just want to quit working, that's not a goal that you're going to actively work towards, because it's nothing. So what I say in the blog is you've got to figure out what your dreams were when you were a kid, the big ones that everybody told you couldn't have because you had to do X, Y, and Z. Find out what those are, dig deep inside of yourself, write them down all over your house, tape them up, talk about them every day.
I love that. So what's next for you guys?
He's actually going to be here tomorrow, and then we're going to go to the Exumas. I don't know if you know where that is, but it's the most beautiful place in the Bahamas, they say. And the Bahamas is one of the most beautiful places in the world. So you can imagine how excited I am about that.
I have no idea where that is, but I'm going to Google map it when we're done.
Yes, and also follow her on Instagram, because I'm sure you'll post pictures.
And then come down and have Mai Tais with me on the beach.
I am so there. I will stay on the boat for a little while. Not permanently, but a little while. Be a fun adventure.
And now I'm sad because Gwen can actually do this now that she's leaving her job, and I can't.
Oh, I could totally do that. I forgot. Oh, sometimes the perks just sneak up on me. For example, my sister has been traveling around the world for a very long time as a missionary. And our mom just recently got into a car accident and will require extensive rehab. So my sister's like, oh, I'm going to come home over the summer. I'm sure that they'll need help. And I'm like, oh, hey, that's a great idea. I can do that when I quit. So that makes me feel really good that I can help out the family like that. Hidden perks everywhere.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Gwen, I'm very glad that you're able to be there for your mom. And I think we were just talking to somebody in another episode about what do you do if a parent gets sick and you have to work and take time off. And it's awesome that you can be there for her. And I hope, knock on wood, that nothing happens to anyone in my family, because I wouldn't be able to do that.
I agree. That's a really, really nice perk.
Yeah. Okay, so I think it's about time for the final two. Gwen, do you want to kick it off?
I would love to kick it off. So, Josie, if people would like to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
They can follow me on Facebook, or absolutely message me on Facebook as well. One of the things that sets me on fire now is helping others, because I do have a lot of downtime and I really do like to help where I can. So Jocelyn Fastener is my name on Facebook, JocelynFastner. I would love to hear from them.
Great.
Also, they can follow the adventure on moonshinepenguin.com. It's just stories about what has happened along the way.
And what's your Instagram feed?
At Moonshine Penguin.
All right, the last question. So, Josie/Jocelyn, what is your wildest dream?
We talk about this all the time. I want to live in a villa in Tuscany or Spain. I can't decide which. It's going to have like 10 bedrooms, a huge open air courtyard in the middle of all of that, balcony, porch, wrap around inside and out, And I just want everyone I love to come and go from this place. And I want to have 100 animals that nobody wants.
That's amazing. We'll also visit you in your sun-drenched villa.
Yes, I would love it.
Maybe by that time I can too.
Everybody's welcome. That's the point of the place.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Go to our website, firedrillpodcast.com, to continue the discussion and get the link to our private Facebook group.
If you like us, leave us a review on iTunes. If you're like me, you have no idea how to do that. So, in the podcast app or in iTunes, search for Fire Drill Podcast, find it, click the Reviews tab, and write something to make my mother proud of me. We read every single review and want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts for making this podcast possible.